In his last book, published close to his shooting on the balcony, MLK wrote the striking sentence, "We have been oppressed as a group, and we must overcome that oppression as a group." Now, as a writer, this got me thinking about an unusual question. In what sense have artists or creative individuals been oppressed as a group? First of all, I want to be clear that I don't mean to insult any groups who have been physically enslaved and literally exterminated. But I'd really like to consider this question seriously, because I think there's some kind of a truth in this. The artist experiences in some way the nobodiness that African Americans have talked, sang, and written about for centuries. This is because there are certainly some genetic or unchangeable components in the creativity of a creative individual, and so these people are known to suffer. It isn't something chosen either. In fact, many would rather be rid of their damn creativity just so they could get along with the way things are. Because otherwise they suffer tremendously when they are cut off from their creative potential. That cutting off happens frequently when creatives look out at the pop world, the school system, or the job market and find few places to fit in. And I'd like to take this seriously. Let's not pretend that there isn't a real socioeconomic difference between a person who finds fulfillment in business and sales and an individual who can't be said to live happily unless they are in some way challenging or exploring beyond what is formulaic, well-liked, or known. For it is precisely that quality of character, rather than the mere fact that someone paints or writes or composes, that comprises what we mean when we say the word artist. So we have the intuition that many pop artists are in some way actually less artists than they are popularity specialists. A true artist is expected to bring us in contact with the unclimbed heights of the imagination or wild forces of creation. So naturally, the social order has found that these individuals are generally best kept in the basement. Now, of course, there are exceptions, and there's the big exception, which is when one of these oddballs strikes a shooting star home run, maybe once in a decade. They produce a film or painting so striking that it delivers an unthinkably new experience and simultaneously moves the direction of the entire social order. But no one needs to be told that this lucky acceptance onto the stage happens only some of the time. Oftentimes we hear of an artist or a composer or a poet who hits these home runs all their life and dies impoverished, often unknown, often by suicide. Something has to be made of this. Something has to be grasped. What do we take our artists to be? The same old retiree who spends his idle hours enjoying Van Gogh, Thoreau, and Wilde frowns at the young people who choose to pursue the arts in lieu of a practical occupation. He just really wishes they would get their act together. So let's ask again, what do we take our artists to be? Do we believe that the popular eye, the hand of the market, the demand of the people will unerringly pick out the great artists, when it is precisely the great artists who the popular eye does not even see and the hand of the market cannot touch? Now, the other most common exception to this rule is that an artist has a unique blend of character traits. Let's say they exercise a flair for social and popular games as well as for creativity. We might here picture a J.K. Rowling or a Bob Dylan, genuinely imaginative social icons. But what of the artists who simply do not take the same interest in popular elements, or who value a brand of complexity or condensation that renders their work difficult, perhaps a James Joyce or an Immanuel Kant? What do we make of these people? What place do we have for them? Let's not deny it, this is a difficult question. On the one hand, there must exist some obligation for artists, as for everyone, to be socially useful. But on the other, we've got to notice that there's this really colossal gap. It separates those artists who are lucky enough or popularly gifted enough to succeed financially, and those who are just as good and produce work that may be just as popular, but who go totally uncompensated. Often, the reason for this is that they are only great artists. but it's as if we demand that they also be great advertisers and great salespeople if they are to survive. Our de facto belief is that Picasso and Nietzsche and Keats ought to starve until they manage to recruit a faithful audience. We might tell them to get real jobs and play with their hobbies in their spare time. So, I am asking us, what do we believe? Can we be both the person who values these great artists in some abstract sense, after they have gained the fortune of approval, of course, and the person who implicitly says that they deserve nothing? We must also notice that artists sometimes say strange things, like the price of a great work of art, of hitting that home run, is something like hitting 95% of pitches directly backwards. Or it's like Quidditch in Harry Potter. They're the seekers. The seeker does nothing useful for the whole game until he catches the snitch. But then the game's over, it doesn't matter, they've won. But we don't have a place for that kind of logic. We don't have a seeker position. Because the magnificent final product of the artist is the result of allowing chaos and non-utility to enter the process. It's difficult for a non-artist to understand how sitting in front of a blank page or canvas, not moving a hand for 3 hours, may be the most productive work an artist does in a day. It's difficult to explain why the masterpiece maybe requires the artist to fall in or out of love with a foreign woman. These sorts of processes, don't align with graphs of common sense and honest labor. In this understanding, the real work of art frequently has no progress markers, and frequently looks identical to failure and idiocy. And if that's the cost of perfect products, then why does it go unpaid? We're close to the core here. What is the worth of an art product if it goes relatively unseen? That's a difficult question. It seems akin to asking about the purpose of monks meditating or monks praying in privacy. Which actually does make a lot of sense, because truly the artist is an unacknowledged spiritual practitioner, but has been mistaken for a manufacturer of saleable products. And sometimes the artist comes to believe that mistake too, because it's easier than accepting that all of society runs counter to your heart. It is the same with all oppressed groups. And that is the saddest thing. As I'm winding down here, I want to apologize if this just sounds like another complaint to add to your mountain of complaints. I didn't intend it that way. I just wanted to frame this problem as honestly as I could, because, getting back to MLK, it seems that the ability for creative people to organize is higher than it's ever been. The reality for the group consciousness of artists is higher than it's ever been. In fact, we're only just beginning to realize how many people actually want to be artists when they aren't under the whip of poverty or the blindfold of joyless work. So we should start by recognizing that what has been done to our ancestors has been done to us. When T.S. Eliot was forced into a banking job because his writing wasn't selling, his wife described how he would come home from work, sink into a chair, and stare blankly at the wall until going to sleep. If that doesn't enrage you, then realize that that is you. That is what is being done to you every hour of the day. And if this thing is ever to be solved, it will only be done by a group unified by the understanding that they have been wronged only because of who they are.